What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of Hardwood Voices. I'm your host, Sean Holmes, and this is a space where we talk basketball tactics, leadership, and the deeper lessons that the game teaches us. Today, I'm joined by my guy, Marshall Tague, a former college basketball head coach who, in 2014, led Lancaster Bible College to a regular season championship and won himself Coach of the Year. He now serves coaches across the country through Nations of Coaches. Even years after stepping away from the sideline, he's still learning, growing, and pouring into coaches. Marshall, I appreciate you being on and welcome to Hardwood Voices.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate you having me and just looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, sir. So I know that you coached at Lancaster Bible College and you
hmm
also coached at Columbia International.
hmm
But what came before coaching and how did basketball first become a part of your life?
Yeah, I guess I'd have to go all the way back to as far as I can remember. Sports was big in our family. Originally from Nebraska, grew up in Nebraska. So obviously grew up a Cornhusker fan. Playing football but played baseball and just played all the sports. And then even into high school when my parents moved out to Phoenix, Arizona in high school. And I spent 4 years in high school at Valley Christian High School. Um, Ran track there, played football, played basketball. But that's really where I fell in love with basketball and knew that that's something I wanted to do after high school. Um, Went to community college right out of high school, and went through some injuries. Didn't know if I was going to play again. That's actually where my coaching started. Was in high school. I was going to college, and then I was an assistant freshman basketball coach, and
Wow.
so that's kind of where it started. And eventually got healthy. Went to what was then Southwestern College here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I played there. Graduated in '04. And then spent my first 8 years after college, after graduation, as an assistant coach there. Went through a transition of Southwestern College, then to Arizona Christian, so it changed names. So now it's Arizona Christian University. Became a part of the GSAC and the NAIA. Like I said, I was there for 8 years, and then that's when I moved on to Pennsylvania at Lancaster Bible College, and then to Columbia International University. So that's a little bit about my journey anyway. But coaching is something that I kind of always knew I wanted to be. I always wanted to be a coach. I was always wanted to stay in sports. Sports has meant so much to me, and coaching. I was a point guard on the floor, so that was kind of next best thing. You can't play, let's coach. So.
That's right. So when did you first realize that coaching was a calling more than just a profession for you?
Yeah, I think thankfully just my experience playing in college, and then starting out as an assistant with the head coach Rick Roth. Our purposes were all aligned, but it was all to impact. It was all to make an impact on guys that were under our care, and so. Yeah, we love to compete and we do everything we could to compete and play at the highest level that we possibly could. But really, at the end of the day, it was always about making an impact in the guys' lives. And so I think that was something that was always with me, and that was always my why or my purpose. But I think as I matured, it became even more of a calling of like, God's not just want me to impact lives, but actually impact lives for Him, His glory. And so anything I could do to draw guys closer into their Creator and the one true thing that we have and we can hold on to. And that, that's an every day, every week, every year like thing that we're just trying to pursue. So.
Was it hard for your players at all to grasp that mission of yours?
Yeah. Because like so many of us, basketball is everything. And so oftentimes it's our identity and who we are, and that's where we get value from. And um, so yeah, I think not everybody would buy into that. I'd always have some that kind of we were aligned, but then there was most, a lot of others that weren't aligned in that way. And but again, I think that's why God puts us in our positions, so that we can continue to share that message and be consistent with that. And eventually, that hits home to guys, hopefully. But sometimes we're mentoring, discipling. Sometimes we're just planting seeds, and sometimes we're watering, and sometimes it's somebody else's job to water. And so, um, yeah, it wasn't always everybody, all the players, they weren't always on board with it. That's for sure. So.
Absolutely. One plants, another man waters, and God
That's
gives the
right.
increase.
That's right.
That's right.
Yep.
Fans, players, and even assistant coaches, they all have preconceived notions of what it's actually like to be a head coach and be in that seat. But once you're in
Right.
the fire, it's a lot different. You feel that pressure, you feel the tension and everything. So, what does being a college head coach actually demand from you day to day?
Um, yeah, for me and kind of for my personality and how I grew up, it demanded a lot of preparation. And that was a constant in my life as a coach. Preparation never stopped. It was continual. And so Um, you don't get to put things off. You don't get to wait. Things have to be done right now. And so for someone like me that's somewhat of a perfectionist and wants things done in a certain way, it was a constant state of preparation. Um, that preparation is, and the reason why that was so important to me, because that gave me confidence. Um, that played right into my confidence. And if I felt prepared, then I felt confident about what we were about to do. But you're right. The pressures, the everyday stress, and it's not just on the court. In fact, on the court's probably the least of my worries. It's everything else going on around, what the guys are going through, what they're dealing with, what's going on in their lives, what's going on in my life, in my family, and in my marriage. And um, that's where things really, that's where sometimes we get hung up, and so, and that's real. The pressure and the stress is real. But it's demanding, it's constant, and and I think the biggest reason for that is because we're our own worst critics. We're our own worst critics, and we want to do well, we want to do our best, and we want our guys to do our best. And so that's just a process that's never ending.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
So, Coach, let's talk about one of the most successful seasons of your career.
Mm.
So, when you look back at that second season at LBC, what are
Hmm.
some things that you can see now that you didn't see in the moment?
Mm. That's a good question. Because even though we won a lot of games and we were really successful, and that's what people see. People see wins and people see all of that. But what they don't see is, and I think this is what gets lost in sports, is we don't see real people. We don't see that people have, on those teams or a part of those organizations or those programs, they're real people dealing with real stuff. And so, I think during those, and I think what happens with winning too is it masks a lot of things. We can overlook some things because of the success. And you didn't really ask this, but if I could go back, during a couple of those seasons there that were really successful, or the ones that weren't for that matter. Um, I think I would have gone back and spent just more time in prayer for those guys, just more time praying for them, and asking God, to lead more instead of me trying to control everything. That's something common that we hear, we talk about, especially in my role right now, is coaches are paranoid control freaks, and it's hard to let go. And sometimes we need to let go. And So if I could go back and do some things different, that's probably what it would be.
I know that confidence is a huge part of winning and a huge part of success. How do you just build that confidence within the team?
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting because I think ultimate confidence that really comes from within. I think that's something that is built from within, and what is most impact. We can have a good speech. We can have some good motivators. but it doesn't take real long for that to wear off, and then what's deep down inside comes out. And so um, I think confidence for me, like I said before, it comes from preparation. And I think confidence from the guys comes from practice and success. But along that, success doesn't just happen because you do it a lot. Um, and so, whatever that thing is. And so there needs to be a culture or an atmosphere of it's okay to fail. It's okay. And the greatest thing about failure is that that's when we learn. And if a group is mature enough to learn from mistakes, and the culture is one of, hey, let's learn and grow, um, then eventually down the line, somewhere in there comes success, and then with that success comes confidence. And so, the more that happens, and the more that cycle can just continue, confidence can come. The problem with that is in some teams, and oftentimes, we as coaches, we don't get to experience that. We just keep failing sometimes, and the confidence never comes, and that's hard. Um, and that's where we have to be grounded. We have to be rooted in truth and belief in what we're doing. As a head coach, we can again verbalize how much we believe in our guys, and we can tell them, but until they believe in themselves, that doesn't go very far often. So they need that belief in themselves. Sure, we can help encourage that, but that comes from their own experience, their own hard work, and their own success. So,
I like that you touched on that too. Mistakes are one of the biggest teachers in the
yep,
game of basketball and the game of life. And I try to even get that to my guys that I coach.
yeah,
Two things that you can do from making mistakes is learning from it and growing from it.
right,
Learn
right.
from it and grow from it.
Yeah, that's the only thing that we can really take from the past, right? Because we try so much to just stay in the moment, not get ahead, but not look back. We've got to learn from the past, and that's it. And then once we do that, we can let the past go and just move on. Because that's really where confidence comes. Like we can take that and move forward. Like we can move forward. You have the ability to think and process and have that next play mentality. That's where confidence comes. But if we can't look back at our mistakes and learn from them, we're going to keep making them. That's for sure.
Absolutely. One story that stuck out to me that I heard you speak about is when the film crew came in and your guys were skipping class.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know this will help some of the players out that are watching this.
Yeah.
Why did responsibility and ownership matter more to you than the game of basketball? And maybe you
Yeah.
could give a little bit of context for the people
Yeah.
who don't know.
Because that if we can't own our stuff, man, life's going to be hard. And we're going to keep blaming other people. And that situation you're talking about, we had a good team. We were having a good year. It was about halfway through, and we were on the road, and we won on a buzzer beater. Came home, it was late, and everybody's on a high. And kind of throughout the next day, I was getting word that people, weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, going to class and doing the things they were supposed to be doing. And so, um, I don't, that's not my standard. My standard is we do what we're supposed to do, regardless of what's going on around us. And so, yeah, that day we had a news crew on campus. They were in the gym. They were doing a story on one of my guys that in our Midnight Madness dunked over the president. And so they caught wind of that, and they wanted to get that out in the public, and that was a really cool thing for us. But I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy because my guys weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And so film crew came. I said, the guys, just we're going to run through some things here while they're here. But as soon as that door is shut and they're gone, you get back in the locker room, you get your stuff on and get your shoes on because we're going to work. And so we worked. They ran and ran and ran and ran. And the best, and what I love about that story is the best thing that took place. Um, the best possible situation I think happened. While those guys were running and throwing up and do all that stuff, they weren't mad at me. They were mad at themselves and they were mad at each other. And so, I would hear things like, "Don't let this happen again. Don't do this again." And so, in that moment, that told me that they were owning it and that they were taking responsibility. And that told me that they really cared. And what's so big about that is they can take that with them, and that ownership, because it's so easy, uh, especially now. I feel like, kids and we just don't own stuff. We don't own it. We don't take responsibility. And so I think we have kids growing up that, get things handed to them, we save our kids from things. We save them from trouble or from issues and this and that. It's like, no, let them experience it. No, let them get through it and figure it out and work on it and own it, like truly own it, and so when you have a group or a guy or a group that does that, that's when maturity happens, and that's when really cool things can happen.
I always hear great coaches say that their best teams were player led,
Oh, for
not coach
sure.
led, player led.
No, for
So
sure. For sure.
it's
No,
huge to
that's
take
that's a, that's
ownership.
100% true. And those dudes on that team, they let it. They let it, you know. I guided them through it, but it was them. They owned it and they let it, and it's just how much they cared, and how much they cared about it. So
So, coach, at some point, the journey shifted, and you said that leaving LBC was one of the hardest decisions of your life. Why?
right. Um, I have really close relationships there. I love the guys there, and it wasn't easy to leave that. Um, we won a lot of games together. We went through ups and downs together, and they were still really good. Um, but sometimes God opens doors and shuts doors for a reason, and so that's what took us to Columbia, in South Carolina, and but it was tough. When you have uh, relationships, it's hard to leave important and meaningful relationships behind. So um, the beauty about that is even though I moved on, most of those relationships didn't end there. Those guys that are still on that team were close. I get to see their kids and hang out with their kids. I get to still be, even though I live across the country, still be a small part of their life, and they get to be a small part of my life, and so that's a special thing.
Coach, I can tell that you really implemented a family culture over there at
Yeah.
LBC. How did your personal family play a part into that decision of you leaving?
Yeah, at that time when I went to LBC, we had our first kid. She was 3 months old, 3 or 4 months old when we got there. We had another child while we were there, so I had two kids when we were there. My wife was awesome. She'd bring kids to the gym. That team grew up with my kids. They were big brothers to my two little kids at that time, and so family was everything. We moved to Columbia, and we didn't know it, but we were pregnant at that time, so we had three and four while we were in South Carolina as well. So I always said when I was coaching, I have two families. I have a family at home and I have a family at school and in the gym, and so always tried to bring those two families together as much as we could. That's what's most important to me is my family and having a culture that understands what family is all about. Um, yeah.
That's awesome, Coach. So now you're still coaching, just in a different way. So
Yep.
how did stepping away from coaching on the sidelines actually challenge your identity?
Yeah, so when I quit at Columbia in 2000, what was it, 2018, we made a decision at that time, a family decision to be done with coaching and move back kind of home to Arizona, and start a new chapter. I think the toughest part about that transition was, sports and basketball was everything to me for so long. Um, And even though I'd preach and I'd say it's not my everything, that got challenged, and so it really faced kind of head on with God trying to teach me too, like no matter what you're doing, whether it's coaching or basketball or no matter what you're doing, um, you can have a purpose. You can have a purpose that's worthy of a calling. You can have a purpose that's worthy of bringing glory to his name, no matter what that is. And so at that time for my wife and my kids, that we felt like it was time to step away and uh, be be more present for our kids. You know, because I think that's one of the biggest difficulties with coaching and with families and with kids is you're just not present as much as you want to be, as much as the job requires you to be gone. It's tough to be absent at home, and it's tough to be absent from your kids, especially when they're little growing up. Um, and so that's what brought us back to Arizona. And I'm extremely thankful and grateful that God did that for sure.
So you are now the regional director for Nation of
Yes,
Coaches.
yeah. So that journey kind of started with working with at a financial company with some of my friends from college, some of my best friends that I played basketball with and went to school with, and so I was at a small local financial company here, and wasn't looking to do anything different really. You know, I worked with my best friends. Our kids are growing up together with other, you know, our best friends' kids, and our wives are all friends. And it was a really cool thing. And so, but again, you know, God has a way of doing things. And a couple of years ago, he kind of reintroduced me to an organization called Nations of Coaches. I got connected with Nations of Coaches when I was coaching in South Carolina. And it's a ministry that just serves and loves on basketball coaches, their spouses, their families, and their teams. And God started opening doors to get back into basketball in that way. So currently, right now, I'm the regional director here in Arizona for Nations of Coaches, and I serve basketball programs. And we serve and we love coaches and their spouses, and we do anything and everything we can to help them. Um, you know, I lived it, my wife lived it, and now we can take those experiences with us and try and impact coaches in a pretty special and unique way. I know what it's like to be in their shoes, and I get the struggles, I get the marriage struggles, I get all of that, and so not that mine's perfect. But we've lived it, and again, we take the lessons that we've learned and God's taught us, and try and just try and help others. So I'm back in gyms. I'm back with coaches in a different way, but it's a way that God has I think uniquely gifted me and designed me to impact other guys to try and help them through whatever they're going through.
And I'm glad you found your purpose and are walking in it now.
Yeah.
Um, who's one of the high level guys that you've been connected with, and what have you learned from them?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do is we can have guys that have been there, done that, and learn from them. I mean, that's mentorship. Mentorship. I heard, you know, before, you know, someone say mentorship is a cheat code. Like you get to learn from other people's experiences. You know, you get to take what they learned in 5 years, and you can learn it in 15 minutes. You know. So that's big, and there's been a lot of people in my life that have impacted me in that way. And you know, I think about the guys I work with right now to past coaches. You know, I can look back and think of, you know, I spent 8 years as an assistant coach with Coach Roth that he just instilled every single day of being consistent, not just on the court, but in your daily life. And just to have that consistency in my life taught me so much, you know. And so there's so many great coaches out there, so many great men out there that we can learn from. Um, Honestly, though, you know, the biggest thing that I can encourage anybody is to look to the master coach. You know, and getting in your word and learning from how Jesus lived his life. There's no better example. There's no better way. And so I think over the years, what I've learned is, and I think reading books and looking to others, I think it's a really good thing, and we can gain wisdom. But um, if the Word of God isn't present daily, if your prayer life isn't on point, you know, that's when we start to get sideways, you know, and I think through all the mentors or leaders or coaches, whoever it is. That's what's I found the most truth, the most consistent, the most love, the most grace, and it's truly the best leadership model I've ever been a part of or read or that sort of thing. So,
I like that. The master coach. I
yep,
like that.
yep, the master coach. Yep. He had 12 dudes that followed him. He had a basketball team there, and he a bunch of knuckleheads, but he showed them how to live and to love. Yep.
The biggest thing that I saw from Jesus and his leadership, or one of the biggest things, because there's plenty to choose from, but he saw their potential before they saw it in themselves. And I
Yeah.
really just look up to that, and I really want to model that in my leadership. And I think a bunch of coaches can learn from that too. Just
Yeah.
to see, because even
Yeah.
some knucklehead guys that you coach is like
Yeah.
you're not looking at the potential, you're looking at what they're doing now, but you're not looking at what God can do for them and what can be extracted out of them.
Yeah. Well, I think so many times right now, I just see it in my own kids' lives too, is you either speak life into them or you speak death. We either grow and get stronger or we start to die. And so we can control that as parents. We can control that as coaches. We can speak life into other people. The Bible talks so much about what comes out of our mouths and our tongues and how much they can hurt or help. And so speaking life into other people and is such a big deal. And you're right. Jesus looked at those guys that he led, and I would agree with you. I don't think they thought much of themselves. And
Fisherman.
yeah, yeah. And so for him to put them in a place to uh, believe not only in themselves, but believe in the one who created them, enough so to share that with others. I mean, that's a big deal. And so yeah, I think the power of speaking life into people and speaking and saying things like, um, God built you and created you for great things. Don't think, don't he didn't make a mistake. He didn't create you as a mistake. Um, he made you just how he wanted to make you. And so use that to bring glory to his name.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, we end every episode with a segment called The Lifelong Learner. Life
Okay.
never stops teaching us, and the greats never stop learning.
Mm.
So, what is one thing you are actively learning or trying to get better at right now as a leader?
Mm. Yeah, I think this is something that we've been hitting home with our Nations of Coaches staff. Um, uh, Whether it's in conversations with our family or other coaches. But we're really working hard. I'm really working hard to not let other people know what I think, um, but what he thinks and what the Word of God says. Because I think so many times we get wrapped up in our own thoughts and opinions. People want advice or this and that. And we say, well, I think and I think and I think. Um, so I'm at a point right now where it's like, I just want to point you at the word and tell you what he thinks. Because that's truly the only answer, that is truth. Um, I can have some good thoughts. I can have some good opinions. But if I'm not, being consistent and just saying, this is what the word of God is saying. Because all the answers are in there. All the answers are in there. No matter what the issues, no matter what is going on in your life, the answer's in that word. And so I think in my leadership of my family or with coaches or whatever it is, it's just a consistent, and really how that happens too is just living our life and out of an overflow of what we put into it. And so how do I do that? Spend time in the Word, spend time in prayer, spend time in the Word, and spend time in prayer. And if that's where I am at consistently, then I can continue to help lead in a way that says, "What's he saying? What's he saying? Not what I'm saying. This is what he's saying." And so that's where I'm at, and trying to just continue to pursue each and every day.
It's great that you just take the initiative to model Jesus's leadership because that sounds a lot like when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he said,
Mhm.
"Not my will, but yours be done."
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the same thing you're saying, not my word, but his word.
Yeah.
So I
I
just
mean,
love
Jesus,
that you
yeah, Jesus modeled it. I mean, how many times did he go off and pray? How many times was he in alone, in lone time with his father, if he did that, then I think that's where we need to be. Uh,
absolutely,
for sure. So,
absolutely. Marshall, there are many things that I can commend you for, and I know that there's plenty of people that should take the time and just learn from someone like you. And I appreciate everything you do for coaches, and I appreciate you just taking the time out to be on Hardwood Voices.
yeah, I appreciate that. And I think, our paths crossed, as I think it's just God. God crossed our paths and has led to this. But I think too, the guys I work with at Nations of Coaches, they're amazing men, they're amazing leaders, and so I continue to learn and grow from them. And I just thank God that He puts people in front of us to help stretch us and help us to grow, and then brings guys like you and me together, by chance, you know, and we just get to enjoy conversation. So appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. This has been another episode of Hardwood Voices. Stay curious, stay humble, keep growing.